Logan Paul invites a Christian apologist onto his podcast, and this is really surprising because in the past, he has attacked and belittled his co-host George Janko for being a Christian, and has been really set himself up as an opponent. Now in the podcast, he's kind of really opened up, and I'm not sure where he says he stands today, but I don't think he's a Christian, especially because of this podcast. But hopefully God saves him. But until then, let's go ahead and watch this podcast. Now, this is a man named Cliff, and he's an apologist with his son. And they talk about stuff specifically towards grace and what is sin. And we'll be talking about like some of the distinctives and reacting to, what is forgiveness and grace. What does that all mean, especially in the eyes of Logan Paul? So let's get right into this video.
Beyond that prerequisite of acceptance of Christ into your heart and a continued path of following Christ as a way to gain access to the kingdom of heaven, are there any other prerequisites beyond that? Or on the flip side, what are some ways to get your ticket canceled? I want to talk a little bit about mortal sins today and how forgiveness applies to those. And especially if you guys have any mortal sins that aren't listed. For me, there was a guy on the plane today that was watching YouTube videos with no headphones on full volume.
Of course.
At 6 a.m. And he was just, he thought it was okay to watch music videos, Latino music videos at 6 a.m. in full volume. In my eyes, you go directly to hell. Like there's no coming back from that. I walked over, I said, hermano, this is not okay. They're giving out free headphones. Why are you doing this to me? I feel like you're directing this directly at me. So what are the mortal sins that people have to avoid, or I mean, we know some of them, I'm assuming murder, and I learned about some of this, but a refresher.
Yeah, can you list them out? And by the way, the mortal sin means if you commit this, you're doomed. You're not. There's no chance.
Or is that what it means? Yeah.
When Jesus.
Okay, so they have like a rudimentary understanding of what sin is, right? So this comes from the Roman Catholic tradition, where they believe that there's two types of sins: venial and mortal sins. And here's how I understand it. I'm not sure if there's a better way to understand this, but there's a line of, let's say, righteousness line. And if you go under that line with a mortal sin, the only way you could go under that line, or maybe is to commit these mortal sins, and now you're sunk. You're going to hell, not saved. Or you could go venial sins, where you could commit venial sins but still stay above the line. You could still be, somewhat good and still stay above this line. But venial sins aren't as bad as mortal sins. Now, maybe you could commit enough mortal sins or enough venial sins to get under this line, but the mortal sins just like plunge you down in that red zone, danger zone. And so that is different from a Protestant belief system. And I think you'll see Cliff really go into a lot of that.
Jesus was dying on the cross. Two thieves were hung on either side of him. Yeah. They were criminals. They were guilty. The first thief turns to Jesus and says, "Come on, miracle boy, get us off these crosses, and then based on that, we'll believe in you." Second criminal turns to the first criminal and says, "You fool, we bleed and die here because we deserve it. But this Jesus, he's the innocent, holy, pure Son of God." And the second criminal turns to Jesus and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Now, right there, Jesus' value system is on the line. He could look the guy in the face and said, "Get down off of here, say 12 Hail Marys, work in a soup kitchen, and if you do a good enough job, maybe you'll make it." He didn't say that. Instead, he said, "I tell you the truth, today you'll be with me in paradise." And that's grace. That's amazing grace, God's undeserved offer of forgiveness, his generosity.
See, so when we're talking about grace, we're talking about undeserved, like zero things that you did to deserve that undeserved favor. You didn't do anything, right? You did nothing. There is no, and he says it, right? No amount of Hail Marys, no amount of Hail Marys, no amount of soup kitchens. And he's kind of belaboring the point, but the point is you cannot earn your way into heaven. There's nothing. And this is reflected in scripture where he is saved instantly. Today you'll be with me in paradise. And so Cliff is saying like, okay, now grace is a little shocking here. Grace is something that when looking on the outside, right? When you see someone who's on their deathbed or on a cross after a lifetime of, let's say, mortal sins, or a lifetime of just bad acting, just lying, stealing, murder, whatever, a complete lifetime of sin, and then you see God just say, "It's all forgiven. It's all forgiven." And when he just says, "Hey, remember me when you go into paradise," and Jesus just says, "I will." right? Like it's all forgiven and I love you and come on in. From the outside looking in, that's almost unfair. You could even say offensive. Like, how is that possible? They just lived a whole life just apart from me, and now on their deathbed, they could turn it around. And I think that's the understanding of grace that needs to deepen for us. Is that like when we look at it from the outside, we might think it's offensive and unfair. However, when we understand that we are that thief on the cross, who we have nothing to offer, we're about to die, we have zero capabilities to offer any good works to God. There's nothing. And even if we do, we still buried under a mountain full of sin anyway. So we can never tip the scales of good works and bad works or whatever sin. That when we come to Jesus bearing our shame and we've got this humility and this acceptance that we can't do it ourselves, that is when grace enters into our lives. It's only for the brokenhearted. It's only for the poor in spirit. It's only for the people who understand that I can't do anything. And there's this thief on a cross. He knows he can't do anything, and he still comes to Jesus and says, please remember me. Compare this with the other thief, right? That heart. Hey, save us, right? Save us. You know you could do it. Just do it. So he wants what Jesus offers, but he doesn't want Jesus. And so you have this different understanding of what you can bring to Jesus and to God for salvation. And I think it's worlds apart.
Now, when you read the Gospels, and I would encourage you guys to read them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they're the eyewitness testimonies about Jesus, what you'll notice is Jesus reserved his most scathing words for religious hypocrites. And the reason is because hypocrisy is pretending to be someone I am not. If I say that I believe in Jesus and talk with you about God and then walk out of here and seek to womanize, you'd point your bony finger in my face and say, Cliff, you're one flaming hypocrite. And you'd be right. So Jesus points out that I'm not going to heaven because I live a good life. I'm going to heaven because of his grace, his offer of forgiveness. But if my faith in him is genuine, it'll be shown in the way I love him, honor him, and obey him.
But wouldn't that put a lot of, I guess in this, the way you're describing so-called Christians or Christians at risk, because we are all imperfect Christians. So at the end of the day, do we all in some way become those religious hypocrites that you're describing?
So you and I are playing ball together. You block my shot. When you land, I elbow you. I say, man, I'm really sorry. Would you please forgive me? You say, yes, Cliff, I forgive you. Second, you block my shot a second time. You come down and boom, I elbow you. All right, now either I'm a hypocrite or I've got a bad habit with my temper. A Christian is someone who has bad habits, and I got a bunch of them. I've had to pray for forgiveness for my pride, for my greed, every day almost, basically. It doesn't mean I'm a hypocrite. It means I got some bad habits. A hypocrite is someone who's playing a game, a stupid game. If I say to you, I'm sorry for elbowing you, but I can hardly wait to do it again, you don't have to have a PhD in psychology to figure out this is one hypocritical dude.
Got it.
It sounds like intent. Sounds like intent matters here.
Well put. The heart, exactly. Intent, motive, exactly.
Because I've seen...
Yeah, so I
basically
think
just-
that's what happens here is that it's hard to determine what the heart is, right? The hypocritical nature of things. And I think Mike is right. Like, if Christians are always messing up, we've got bad habits. I would even say more than just bad habits from Cliff. I would just lean into it, just a sinful nature. Like, our nature is just inclined to sin. This is in Genesis, right? Like the every inclination of our heart is only evil all the time. And we could get into the nuance of that verse, but the thing is that I feel like our nature is inclined or leans into sinning for for self-preservation type of stuff, absorption, grandeur-ment. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it's about the self, right? And so when we're talking about hypocritical natures, we're speaking of people who don't know that they deserve, or they don't know that they need grace. They think that, and he talks about the Pharisees, they think that their good works are good enough for them to be accepted. Like, they think that going to church all the time and volunteering all the time and walking the old lady across the street, or not cussing, or all these Christian cliches, donating and all this stuff, like that's not good enough to get you into heaven because of all the sin that you've already committed and the sin that's in our heart. And so when we think that, and this was especially true in Pharisees' day, when we think that we have enough good works to get us into heaven, that's what the Pharisees believed. And Jesus had what he said, what Cliff said, the most scathing remarks for those people, those self-righteous people who, when I say self-righteous, I mean they rely on their own self, their own, what they bring to the table in the negotiation for their salvation, for getting into heaven. Like it's you and it's God, and you're gonna meet at this table negotiating, and you're like, look what I did, me, and you're gonna stand on that. Not you. We stand on that, and God's gonna say, not good enough, not good enough, and then someone else is gonna come to the table, brokenhearted, poor in spirit. And they're gonna say, I can only get into heaven because of you, because of what Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. He paid the debt, he paid the penalty, and he earned all the good, the perfect record, the perfect life. He gave that to me. That's what grace is. That's what he's talking about here. I wish he had more time to extrapolate on it. You could see it throughout the rest of the video. The link will be down in the section below. I'll probably make more of this on more of the viral content within this podcast. But it is one of those things that I really do hope that Logan gets. Like, I hope his heart is broken and the pride is shattered and the humility enters in and floods his heart, and God rejuvenates, or rather makes that stone turn to flesh, a heart of stone into heart of flesh. Because what ends up happening is that we get so lost in our ability to produce a righteous list of good deeds and ask for forgiveness. And while we're on the topic of forgiveness, since he brought it up, forgiveness, you could look at forgiveness in two different ways, right? You could look at forgiveness as a way to reconcile a relationship, or mend the relationship. Like, I hurt them, I elbowed him, and so would you please forgive me? That's me thinking that our relationship is broken or wrecked, and I'm trying to repair it, so forgive me. And now if you ask for forgiveness and they don't forgive you, you're like, why not? Now you're upset, right? Because you're forgive me. But if you ask for forgiveness, and this is the key, this is what changed my thought process on it, is if you ask forgiveness from the standpoint that you already know that they love you, and that when you offended them, it broke their heart. It didn't make them mad and force them to separate the relationship. It broke their heart because you are harming someone who loves you very dearly. And so if you ask for forgiveness from the status of, they love me so much that why would I break their heart? Now that's true repentance. That is a true humble, genuine, authentic heart to forgive. Otherwise, if you're asking for forgiveness to earn and repair the relationship, it's almost as if you're asking for an exchange with Jesus. It's almost as if you're asking for exchange. But I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you agree with this or not. If you come from a different faith, let me know in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. There's certainly a lot of ways to look at this, but I'm looking forward to more impulsive videos. I'll see you guys in the next video.